Hello everybody, I'm Michael Reed, Vedic astrologer. For a limited time only, all of my video courses are being offered on a pay-by-donation basis. I'm doing this as a sign of support to help everybody cope with the difficulty of social distancing and having to be isolated at home. I figure, well, maybe you can use this time to study Vedic astrology if you want to. So if you're interested in taking advantage of that offer, please do visit the video courses link, which is above. And I mentioned the astrological services as well, because also for a limited time, you can schedule a half-hour consultation on a pay-by-donation basis as well. I'll probably be taking that down in the near future within the next day or so, because I can only accept a certain number of bookings at that particular in that particular manner. So if you're interested in that, you can also visit the astrological services page, which is also above. Thanks a lot. Hello everybody. I hope you're all staying very safe. And I hope you're all staying very sane during these very difficult times that we're facing. Myself, on my end, I've been finding that I really have needed to slow things down and pace myself, right? And rather than like push and push and push and pile more responsibility on top of myself to the level that, it begins to feel like it's too much, and then I begin to feel exhausted. Well, I've just been going, you know what? Really, my mind, my spirit, my emotions are telling me to take things slowly right now. And so I've been doing that, and I've been reconnecting, with the simpler side of life, whilst still keeping things going, obviously on this end. But I've just been trying to simplify rather than complicate things. And I think there's a lesson in that for all of us right now. And so I wanted to kind of put together this video on Ketu's transit through Mula Nakshatra, which takes place between now and the 27th of October. So we're being given an opportunity, even though it may feel like we're dealing with something that's a curse, right? In everything that is really horrible, in the most tragic things in the world, there is always something that comes out of it. And we have a choice at certain moments in terms of how we respond to certain things that happen in our lives, right? Right now, while, all of this coronavirus stuff is going on, we're dealing with a very compromised Jupiter, okay? Now, Jupiter, in relation to the immune system, deals with the thymus gland. And I've spoken about this many times. The thymus gland also very deeply connects to the electromagnetic field. So you could say that we're having a global electromagnetic field problem that is leading to a global immunity problem. But also you can understand that we're really needing to try to stay focused on Jupiter during these difficult times and trying to integrate more understanding, trying to have a little more compassion, trying to have a little bit of faith. And yes, even though you may be tempted to get caught up in the negativity, caught up in the panic, caught up in the fear, because you feel that you have reasons to do those things, at the same time, we need to stay focused as much as we possibly can on the lighter side of life. And you need to bring your thoughts back to the capacity that you can still, in the midst of all of this, find reasons to do that, okay? So as we're dealing with all this, global tragedy that we're focusing on, and Ketu has now shifted into Mula Nakshatra, where it's going to remain until, as I mentioned before, the 27th of October, here are some things that I think that we're looking at. During the first part of this transit, which lasts until the 24th of August, Rahu will be in Ardra Nakshatra, directly opposite. Now let's kind of focus first on Mula Nakshatra. And I wanted to share with you, and please pardon me, I'm bringing something up on my screen right now, which is a sutra from a text called the Taittiriya Brahmana. And this is a sutra on Mula Nakshatra. And it's very powerful, especially if we try to really meditate upon this and understand it. So the sutra is the uprootings for Niriti. Niriti is the goddess of dissolution, the goddess of destruction even. And that sounds like a really horrible thing, but hey, that's a natural part of creation too. So the uprootings for Niriti are fracturing from above and breaking into pieces from below. So we don't like the concept of something fracturing. We don't like the concept of something breaking. But hey, when that thing that is fracturing and when that thing that is breaking is something that we need to eliminate from our life, well, even though we may not like the process that we're going through in order to get from point A to point B, it might be a wise thing to listen and to understand. And here's the positive thread in that otherwise, dismal sounding sutra that I just gave you. The uprootings for Niriti are fracturing from above and breaking into pieces from below. When we need to go through change and we're clinging very tightly to an old structure, and that old structure is keeping us, from functioning in the way that we need to function going forward in order to preserve life and in order to keep things growing and evolving here on the planet, then it's something that needs to disappear. And it's that tumbling down process that we find a lot of difficulty in. But if we relate to that in a more, I want to use the word, in more of a manner of accepting that this is something that's happening, because really on a certain level, it'd be kind of stupid to pretend that nothing is happening at all, because something is happening. We're all going through, whatever it might be in your personal philosophy of what's going on. We're definitely going through some changes, right? So you might as well accept that we're going through changes. And the more that you can accept that we're going through changes, then the more that you can see that while something is seemingly fracturing and falling apart, it's breaking into little bite-sized pieces so that you can digest it a little bit at a time. Where the difficulty begins to come into the equation is when we take a more negative side of the Ardra approach. Now, every nakshatra has a positive polarity and a negative polarity, just as every human being has a positive and a negative polarity. And it's all a part of this duality called existence, right? So the more difficult sides of that Ardra way of approaching the situation is with this, I am going to make things happen in this particular way. I'm going to be focused on creating this. Ketu and Mula and Rahu and Ardra Nakshatra is making us look at the concept of acquisition, right? One thing that we've had to look at during this whole crisis so far is how we're so focused on acquiring, how we're so focused on having at any cost possible. Everything from hoarding toilet roll to hoarding medicine and hoarding food. I must have this in order to do this, right? And this is the way that I know is to go out and deal with things and to shop and to do this and to do that. And that's the way of life that I know, right? And I have to make sure that I have that. And then you end up having people, on the upper echelon of things, if you want to have an upper echelon and a lower echelon. And it's kind of questionable as to which is the upper and which is the lower, but we won't get into all of that, who go, I must have my power at all possible costs, and I must hold on to my power at all possible costs. Well, the thing is we're not going to be able to be in a position during this transition to hang on to anything other than Well, we have a choice. We can hang on to each other, right? We can understand. We can try to have a little more patience with each other. We can try to have a little more understanding of each other. We can try to have a little more compassion for each other. Because we're either all in this together, getting through this together and coming out the other side of it, or we're all pitted against each other and battling against each other and pointing fingers at this country and pointing fingers at that country and going, the fault is over there, the fault is over here, the fault is with this person, the fault is with that person. Well, guess what? On a certain level, I'm going to say this and you're not going to like it. The fault is with me, the fault is with you, and the fault is with every single person for allowing a certain way of life to continue. Well, now, perhaps, whilst we're dealing with this rather perhaps uncomfortable way of dealing with things right now, through things like home isolation, and I was mentioning this in another recent video, while we're dealing with this concept of home isolation, we're in home isolation because of how interconnected we all are, because how something that happened on one area of the globe has spread to another area of the globe. And daily, we're seeing reports on things that are going on in different countries, and we're wanting to tune into different countries a lot more because we're wanting to know what's going on there. Are things getting better there? Because that may mean things are getting better here. So even though we're all kind of isolated from each other, we're also recognizing more deeply how interconnected we all are and how this whole thing of existence that we're, kind of trying to function within, really, we're here existing in one gigantic organism, right? So all of us humans on, lockdown, the air's getting cleaner, right? We're part of this organism called Earth, and we're part of something that's beyond that. Something that happens with one aspect of this gigantic organism, this gigantic ecosystem, if you want to call it that, and that ecosystem expands beyond our own planet. But this gigantic ecosystem that we exist within and that we're all a part of, something happens to us, it impacts the rest of it, right? So one part dying off is going to impact another part. So we need to find the capacity to cohabitate. So with going back to Ketu in Mula Nakshatra and Rahu in Ardra Nakshatra, both of those nakshatras are dog nakshatras, right? What are dogs? They're loyal, right? Sometimes they can be loyal to a fault. So we may be being loyal to a particular lifestyle, to a fault. Ketu in Mula Nakshatra is in a Brahman Nakshatra. Brahman Nakshatras are chaste, but sometimes we can be chaste to something that isn't perhaps the best thing for us to be chaste to, like, panic, okay? And we can be chaste to things like clinging on to belief systems that have built this gigantic mess that we're dealing with in the first place. Right? And we can go, I'm not going to let go of my way of life for anything. I'm just going to continue with that. Well, we can be too chaste to that as well, right? And then we can take radical steps to try to continue with that, right? When we do that, then we kind of provoke, well, I want to say the more difficult side of Mula Nakshatra, which goes, okay, well, you're not getting it. So now I have to create this thing that happens in life that makes it so that everything falls apart because you won't let go naturally. So if you're not going to let go naturally, I have no choice but to kind of bring some type of destruction into your life in order to make you let go. And so, we may be dealing with, a few months of refusing to let go. But you have a choice, and I have a choice, right? And, the positive side of things like this, let's go back to Ketu. Ketu, the place related to Ketu is a horse stable. What happens in a horse stable? Okay, that's where animals are kept. And that we're all kind of being kept in a certain type of horse stable right now. And horses are very powerful animals. Horses like to run, right? They like to use that power. Humans like to, be able to use their power in both positive manners and, sometimes, not in the most positive of manners, right? But it's like this powerful force that's being locked up, okay? Rahu in Ardra Nakshatra, the place connected to Ardra Nakshatra, is a temple. So we're being asked during this time of internment with Ketu in Mula and Rahu in Ardra Nakshatra to look over those things that we hold sacred. Okay? Is the way of life of, building up an ecostructure where one person must have phenomenally more than another person, and another person has to remain lower down on the scale. I mean, look at all these things that are going on, right? Suddenly we can print money, and suddenly, where we haven't been able to give money to certain things, we can do that now, but we weren't able to do that before, right? So we're being asked to look at things on a different level and to make different decisions. Am I saying that greed is going to go away? Am I saying that, people are not going to want to hoard? Am I saying that there will not be people who go, well, more for me and screw you, you little person, right? Am I saying that's all going to stop? Well, it's doubtful. But we're being given an opportunity to look at things and to make decisions in terms of how we want to structure things going forward. So in terms of how I'm looking at this coming time period that we're dealing with, well, I'm seeing some times between, now and probably August where there is a certain process of clinging on really tightly to an old structure or a way of dealing with things. But the hope comes when we get into Mrigashira Nakshatra, when Rahu enters Mrigashira, using the calculations I work with on the 24th of August. And I know that may be different than the calculations some of you are using. I use this because I find it more accurate. Mrigashira Nakshatra is a Mridu and Maitram Nakshatra, right? It's a delicate and a friendly nakshatra. Whereas Mula Nakshatra and Ardra Nakshatra are both Tikshna and Daruna Nakshatras, which mean sharp and harsh. That's kind of like walking the razor's edge. Things are intense and you feel like you're walking the razor's edge with something. And there's a lot of jiva or assertive energy in connection with Ketu and Mula and Rahu and Ardra Nakshatra, wanting to support something at all costs. Because Rahu, being a Dhatu planet, which is the mineral kingdom likes to focus on support. Ketu being a Jiva planet, which relates to the animal kingdom and relates to the concept of being assertive, taking action, things along those lines, is in a Dhatu Nakshatra. So you have a blend of Dhatu and Jiva energy, which means must support something at all costs, must be assertive to support something. Now that can be positive too, because we want to support life. We want to support healing. Those are good things to support, right? But we also want to support a new way forward rather than supporting the old way, which, it's time for some changes anyway, because as we've been looking at things that have been happening to the environment, things that have been happening in the world at large, we can see that, we've been building to something that's pretty intense, right? Here's an opportunity to begin to make some changes. Or we can just keep pointing fingers at each other, right? And we can keep blaming at each other. And we can keep not doing something about the problem. But we do have a choice right now, okay? So probably when we get to about the 24th of August, we'll be entering a period of time between then and the 27th of October where we're finding ourselves in a space of, for lack of a better way to put it, picking up the pieces, right? And going, okay, this is what's left after all of that mess. How can we be more supportive in nourishing ourselves going forward? What actions can we take so that we can weave something back together from all the different problems that we found as being existent, right? Mrigashira Nakshatra has a tone of reconciliation with it. It's about separating something or something having been separated before and then reuniting. And at the time of Ketu's transit through Mula with Rahu and Mrigashira, Mars is really strong. super strong. So this gives us the capacity to do something really positive with this. The body part connected to Mrigashira Nakshatra is the eyes. The animal connected to Mrigashira Nakshatra is the snake. We can see the problem so that we can make a transformation and begin to create some positive changes going forward. Or we can just try to patch things back together and roll along the road in the same way that we have for such a long period of time. And I know which of those paths that I would choose. How about you? Please feel free to let me know in the comments section below. And if you found this video useful for you, you might also want to consider scheduling in an astrological service with me through my astrological services page, which you will see linked above, for a very limited time only. For those of you scheduling a half-hour consultation, you can do that on a donation basis if you want to, with a suggested minimum donation of $30 for a half-hour reading. I'm only going to keep that offer open for a few days, though, until I get a certain number of bookings, and then I'm going to have to take the offer down. But I wanted to put it up as a sign of support during these difficult times and help as much as I possibly can. Thanks a lot for watching this video on Ketu's transit through Mula Nakshatra between now and the 27th of October 2020. Until next time, please, please, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.